Okay, we're doing the Sabbath Bible lessons. Just let me go live here. Uh, okay. All right. Let's see how we go. So we've got Sabbath Bible lessons, lessons from the book of Mark. Hopefully you can hear me okay. Yep, I think I've got everything working here. I hope. All right, so we're going lessons from the book of Mark, week number 3, SBL Teachers Helps. Let me just turn this a bit. Okay, so I'm doing this on Instagram and on YouTube, streaming both at the same time. 2 different devices. Let's see how we go. On Instagram, this is going to be back to front. Okay, you guys there on YouTube can read it, but on Insta, sorry guys, back to front. Insta have not worked out how to mirror the front-facing camera so that you can see things left to right instead of right to left. Anyway, all right, we're doing week number 3, a worker of miracles, Sabbath Bible lesson teachers helps. As you know, I've been doing this since 2013. What we've been doing is going through the lesson each week to work out what is the overall objective of the lesson and what is the. Hi, Adriana. Good to see you. What is the lesson objective? And we formulate the lesson objective, or we develop that from the consideration of the daily lesson study lessons for each day. Okay. Each day is going to have a take home point. So you end up with 5 take home points that will summarize the main idea for that day. And those 5 take home points are what we call the micro points. Those micro points are summarized and then into an overall objective for the lesson, what we call a macro point. And when we teach, we state the objective, the macro point. We then explain how we are going to establish that objective. And we go step by step, day by day, asking questions that develop those micro points, okay, for the lesson. Now, in asking the questions, don't simply read the Bible verse, the question here, Bible verse, and note. Don't just ask someone to read those things. You want to ask people, if you're teaching, particularly teachers, in the class, questions that are going to bring out from the students what they understand from the Bible verses that they've been studying. And do they understand the point about the Bible verses? Do they understand in their own words? Can they relate them in their own words, what the meaning of those verses is and what the meaning of the thoughts are on that day? So we want to ask those kind of questions, the open-ended questions, not the yes or no questions, the ones that end in who, what, when, where, why, or how. And that's generally how these questions are asked here. And they're discussion questions, okay? But don't always ask just the question here, read the Bible verse, and then read the note. That's not teaching the lesson. Remember, the teacher is to get from the, have the students develop in their own words or repeat in their own words or recount in their own words the main point they got for that verse. So that's where we want to ask those kind of questions. Also, I've got a little tool I use here for myself. And this is even back to front here, isn't it, on YouTube? What a shame about that anyway. Sorry, guys, it's back to front. It's back to front. It wasn't back to front before on YouTube. Anyway, it is now. Can you read that? Oh, I'm gonna have to get this fixed for next week. Anyway, sorry, people. I don't know why it's doing that. I can't turn that around, huh? Look. Anyway, it says here a new concept. Now I use here the asterisk for a new concept. The arrow is a personal need. The plus symbol is a personal help. And the hash symbol is something the class should understand. To give you an idea how this works with the hash symbols, I actually use the hash as something the class needs to understand. I put those beside the area or question, that either the part of the note or the question that I think is important for the class to understand for that day. You can see for each day, I've got a hash symbol here. I've got another hash symbol over here. So every day I have a hash symbol. Well, I think in America you call it the pound symbol. But that is one way of marking up my lesson so I know on that particular day, where is the main point? Well, there it is at the bottom. That's what I want to hone in on. And I have an asterisk here. Is something in the class. It's a new concept or a concept I want to discuss further in class. I mark it with an asterisk. So there's a few points there that I've marked with asterisks. You can see there, one there, over here. I'm going to discuss those further in class, but the things I want them to understand are the hash symbols. That is where I'm going to develop my main point from for each day. So that's a bit of an understanding of how I go about it. Now, as far as this lesson is concerned for this week, a worker of miracles. Again, this is lessons from the book of Mark. It was the last SBL that I edited as the Sabbath school director, so it has a special place in my heart, and I trust I will gain a blessing from it. Now, this section here, we're learning Christ is a worker of miracles. And this fact is evidence that Jesus is the prophet that was prophesied to come into the world. That prophet's referred to in the key verse, John 6, verse 14. It says there, then those men, when they had seen the miracle that Jesus did, said, this is of a truth that prophet that should come into the world. So this is the point of the lesson. It's confirming that the miracles were a sign that Jesus was the prophet that God was to send into the world as the savior of the world. So my macro point for this week is this: Christ's power to heal the many or the few, control the elements, or provide food for the multitude confirmed his divinity as the Son of God, or as that prophet that should come into the world, the promised Messiah. So he was the Son of God, actually. So this is what it's proven. Now, that's a summary. How I got there, I won't go through every question I'm going to ask, but I'll just highlight the micro points for each day. So what I got here now for under Monday section, it's called Many Are Healed. This is an indication of just the extent of Christ's ministry, how many people were healed just in one day. It says here in Mark 1 that it was the Sabbath day. Jesus had been visiting Peter's city, Capernaum, and he'd been, there. And it says here, even when the sun did set, they brought unto him all that were diseased and them that were possessed with devils, and all the city was gathered together at the door. And in the morning, rising up a great, so all the city had gathered there together at the door. It was the door of Peter's house. The whole city had gathered of Capernaum had gathered there at Peter's home to be healed. So this was an amazing sight. It must have been. Now, one point here though that I've marked up with an asterisk as well as a hash symbol, and that is the second note under here, under the point, and that was this part here in Mark chapter 1, the very next two verses down, Mark 1 verse 35. It says here, and in the morning, rising up a great while before day, he, that is Jesus, went out and departed into a solitary place and there prayed. So Jesus, while he persisted in healing the great multitudes, he didn't stop until, it says in the note that until the last sufferer had been relieved. He didn't stop. So Jesus, again, bringing out his compassion for those who are sick, for those who needed his healing grace. He didn't stop laboring for them until the last sufferer was relieved. And then, even then, he didn't get much sleep at all. He just went out a great while before the day to pray. And so that says to me that Christ's persistence in healing the multitudes was supported by solitary prayer. So in other words, human strength was still needed. He was God, yes, but in the flesh. He still needed his humanity to be strengthened to carry on with his work. So this is a thought that I would highlight here as a micro point for that day. The next section, the people flock to Jesus, is the next section. So this is just elaborating a little further here. The people flock to Jesus, but when do they flock to him? Well, if you look at the context here under question 2a, it talks about here, or question is asked, when on another occasion Jesus arrived by ship to Gennesaret, what happened? Now, Gennesaret is actually the same city. It's Capernaum. It's another name for Capernaum. It's still the same place. Jesus has gone back there only one day later. So this must have been probably on he was there the Saturday night. They're all healing them all. So a day later, probably on the Sunday evening, or else Monday morning, maybe a day later. He had an absence of one day. It says in the note, he'd been away, but when he went back, everybody, when he got out of the ship, everybody had heard about what happened, the day before yesterday. And then they came, or they sent word abroad that Jesus was back again, and not just Capernaum, but who were already healed, everybody there, but everyone from the surrounding regions came in with all their sick, and they put them all along the way as Jesus walked, so that as they passed by his way, he might touch or that they might touch the hem of his garment. So this was the miraculous. This was the marvelous faith that they had. So this is just the renown that happened just as a result of that one day of healing in the Capernaum. A day later, he goes back again, and now everyone from the whole region is brought there. So it was tremendous, and we'll see what Jesus then does to try and deal with this situation. Because remember, he is the Son of God, but as a man, he's restricted by his humanity, where he can go or how long he can go. He's restricted by time and place. And we'll see on this section 3 on the Tuesday, what he does to accommodate that part. But I've highlighted here the note under question 3. Now, question 3 had to do, which is question C, 2C. Question 2C was the experience that happened in Mark 5 of a woman who touched the hem of Jesus' garment. But what does Jesus do? Well, all the crowd is thronging about him, pushing him along the way. And this woman who'd been sick with this infirmity for 12 years or more, issue of blood, she just touched the hem of his garment, and she was healed. And Christ perceived virtue going out from him. Now, he said, "Who touched me?" And everyone said, "What's going on here? What do you mean, who touched you? The crowd's pressing about you, and you're asking who touched you?" Well, the point is, Jesus could recognize the touch of faith, distinguish the touch of faith from the casual touch of the multitude upon his clothing. And so this woman had that faith. It was a faith, as the note brings out here, and I've put a hash symbol beside here, because that's, I think, is the key point here, that the faith that brings us into vital contact with Christ expresses on our part supreme preference, perfect reliance, entire consecration, is the faith that we need. That's the faith that works by love, purifies the soul. It works in the life of the follower of Christ. True obedience to God's commandments, for love to God and love to the man will be the result of vital connection with Christ. So this is the faith that brings us into vital connection, vital meaning life-giving. So the faith that will give us spiritual life is the faith that expresses this part: supreme preference, perfect reliance, and entire consecration. That's the kind of faith that receives that miracle working power of Christ in the life. And the greatest miracle he can do is change our hearts, from sin to holiness, or convert us from a life of sin to a life of pursuing holiness after God. So that's the point I would highlight there. So my micro for Tuesday is: miracles happen when faith brings us into vital connection with Christ. That's when miracles happen. You can put that to the test. And the faith is that expresses supreme preference, perfect reliance, and entire consecration. That's the kind of faith we want to have. Now, under 3, as I mentioned before, so many people are gathering around Jesus, all from all the regions about. There's too many for him to deal with in one day. So he divides his disciples up 2 by 2. This is an interesting point, 2 by 2, and then sends them forth to preach and gives them instructions there under Mark 6, 7 to 11. And then they go out, and under question B, it tells us what they did. They went out and preached that men should repent, and they cast out many devils and anointed with oil many that were sick and healed them. So the disciples combined, interestingly, it brings out here, they combined teaching with healing. And that's the ideal way that we should be approaching the gospel work. It's medical missionary work. It's reaching the needs of the soul, reaching the needs of the person physically, so that we can meet their needs spiritually. We can, like the health message is the right arm of the message, third angel's message, the health reform. It's the right arm that opens the door to let the body in. That is to let the gospel message in. Okay, the third angel's message, the everlasting gospel. That's the key thing here. So, as a minister, as teachers of the gospel, we want to combine healing and teaching together, which is what the disciples were doing. And that's what Jesus, so that's the key thought. That's the key idea here. And I've highlighted that. Of course, 2 by 2 is important. Laboring together 2 by 2, not 2 by 2 hand in hand, but close enough so that when you are needing help, the other one can come by and help you. You might, go to different people, different homes. Maybe you do go 2 by 2 together sometimes, but other times you'll go separately to different places. It's house to house work. That's what's brought out here. House to house work. It's healing, meeting people's needs, and then sharing with them the gospel. You can do that in the same city together, maybe the same within a few hours apart, but near enough to help each other when needed. So this is to come together to pray and to counsel together. So this is the idea of 2 by 2. But the important thing here I've highlighted for me, and that becomes part of my my micro point for this day, is the fact of Christ and that healing and preaching are combined. The one is not to take the place of the other. Okay. In fact, and probably in some respects, the gospel preaching takes the place of the healing, and some people would have the healing take the place of the preaching, but it's to go hand in hand, the one and the other. All right. So my micro point is when missionaries go 2 by 2, closely connecting healing and teaching, house to house, miracles follow. So that's my micro point for Monday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. Now for Wednesday, again, coming back to Christ performing miracles, even the elements obey. So Christ, the experience was brought out here of Jesus in the storm. A beautiful story. I remember reading that story to my children as a child. I mean, when they were little, I was a parent of, obviously, but they were little, and I remember reading that story to them from the Bible, but also from I forget those little storybooks. I don't know if you know which storybooks I'm talking about, but there's one called Jesus in the Storm. My eldest son would remember that. So Jesus in the Storm, but it's a beautiful story that just emphasizes Jesus. 2 things here I've highlighted. Well, I want to discuss. I've put an asterisk beside the key concept I want to discuss here, and then I've highlighted or put a hash symbol or a pound symbol beside what's going to be the something the class needs to understand. And that's this. The disciples were fearful. They thought they were going to drown. They thought their life was threatened. But Jesus was not fearful. In fact, Jesus was asleep in the middle of a storm. Can you believe that? I remember my wife tells me she remembers it, that when often, not often, but I mean, she occasionally just reminded me the other day about something. When we were camping one time, I set up a tent. Now I'm pretty much a stickler for details, and I want to make sure that this tent is not going to fall down if it rains. I used to be in the Air Force cadets when I was a teenager, and we learned how to put up tents and stuff like that. So I put my tent up, dug a ditch around to make sure that if the water, because we were on a bit of an incline, if the water came down, so it doesn't run underneath your bedding, you dig a small trench, just say 6 inches wide or whatever, just a small one, just around the tent, so the water can come down the hill and flow around your tent, and your tent ground stays dry. I then made sure that all the poles were staked tightly, put a tarp over the whole lot in case it did storm, because we knew it was going to storm. And then I went to sleep. And I rested sure enough, the wind came, it stormed, it was a thunder and lightning, a downpour. You know what? I never woke up. And my wife said, "What's going on? Don't worry about it. The tent's fine." And then the family that was next door to us were out there in the middle of the rain because their tent pegs were blowing down and all those kind of things. They were trying to fix their tent up again in the middle of the storm. And that's what the disciples were doing quite here. They were fearful that they were going to sink. But you know what? Jesus is not fearful. He's resting in the care of his Father. And that's the point I'd like to discuss here on Wednesday. That Jesus had a faith in his Father that allowed him to trust himself fully to his Father's care. His Father was taking care of him, and no matter what storm came, Jesus' life was going to be preserved. And he wasn't presumptuous in that. He was just confident in his Father's care. He was walking in his Father's will, and while he was doing that, God would take care of him, whatever may come, good or bad, a storm or sunshine. In this case, there was a storm, but Jesus was still asleep. The disciples were fearing for their life, and so when they cried out to him, "Lord," Jesus stirred and they looked to him, "Lord, we perish," they cried. And Jesus looked around and said, "What's going on?" And he just says, "Peace, be still." And the storm stopped. As it says here, the storm ceases, the billows sink to rest, the clouds roll away, and the stars shine forth. The boat rests upon a quiet sea. Then turning to his disciples, Jesus asks sorrowfully, "Why are ye so fearful? Have ye not yet faith?" And the disciples were like silence now. Here they were crying one minute, and the next minute is sunshine. And they're crying out for their life, and the next minute there's sunshine. And they're like, "What?" They couldn't believe it. Jesus was in control of the elements. He is God. He's the Son of God. He can command the elements to be still, and they're still. So that's another evidence of his divinity. But they should have had confidence in Jesus that they would be safe no matter what storm came their way. So that's the point I would bring out. So my key point here is the key point for this day, the micro point, is resting with perfect faith in the Father's care. Christ had no fear over the nature which he controlled. Okay, so that's my micro point for Wednesday. And the last one, Jesus provides for our needs. What I would highlight here is this point here, that God knows our needs, right? As it says there in that verse, God shall supply all your need according to his riches and glory by Christ Jesus. And how do you know that? Because in the previous question, Jesus fed the 5,000. They were there standing all day, some of them mothers with their babies in their arms. Everyone was weary, tired, hungry. Jesus, in compassion, asked them all to sit down and fed them through a miracle. 5 loaves of barley, 5 barley loaves and 2 fishes, and he used those things to feed everybody. And there were 12 baskets full of crumbs left over. That just goes to show how much of a miracle that was, and how much care Jesus had for his people, or for the people listening to him. And if he has that much care for them, he's going to have that much care for us today. So my God shall supply all your needs. So let's not worry about the future, right? So my point here, if Christ performed a miracle to feed 5,000, we can have assurance that he will do the same for our needs today. Okay, so there's my 5 micro points. So running through them again under Sunday. Miracles happen when faith brings us into vital connection with Christ. Okay, that's point number 1. Let me repeat that again. Miracles happen when where am I here? Miracles happen when no, sorry, that was Tuesday. No, that was Monday. Sunday is Christ's persistence in healing the multitudes was supported by personal solitary prayer. just emphasizing that his humanity needed strength. Even though he performed those miracles as the divine Son of God in healing everybody in Capernaum, he still needed strength to embrace his humanity. So he spent personal time in prayer, no matter how, even though he was so weary. So Christ's persistence in healing the multitudes was supported by personal solitary prayer. The micro point for Monday is miracles happen when faith brings us into vital connection with Christ. And that faith is one that expresses supreme preference, remember, perfect reliance and entire consecration. The third micro point, remember, from from Tuesday, is when missionaries go 2 by 2, closely connecting, healing, and teaching house to house, miracles follow. Okay, that's the promise, that's the assurance. And the greatest miracle, guess what it is? The miracle of a converted heart. That's what will follow. So combine your healing with your teaching, combine medical missionary work with teaching of the gospel, 2 by 2. And under Wednesday, my micro point, remember, was resting with perfect faith in the Father's care. Christ had no fear over the nature which he controlled. Okay? And neither should we when we are resting by faith in Christ, walking in his will. And the fifth micro point, if Christ performed a miracle to feed 5,000, we can have assurance that he will do the same for us today in fulfilling our needs. Okay? So there's my 5 micro points. Summarizing those now, getting one macro point out of that. Okay, the best thing I could come to, as I said, it's a one-liner, one sentence, and that is this: Christ's power to heal the many or the few, control the elements, or provide food for the multitude, confirmed his divinity as the Son of God. And that's it. So that's what we want to bring out here today about the miracles, Christ as the miracle worker. So that's your macro point. The micros are the foundation for that. And as we go through the lesson, as I mentioned there, the points, those micro points have been developed from my study of the lesson. So that's my study. That's my take on it. I don't know what yours is. Hey, share it in the comments. If you're on YouTube, share me your thoughts on YouTube in the comments section. For those on Instagram, you can watch this again on YouTube. If you want to see it in landscape mode, go to YouTube. If you want to see it in portrait mode, go to Instagram Live. My account there is Paul. What's my account name? I don't even know. Paul Chapman 67. Paul Chapman 67, something like that, on Instagram. Okay, and on YouTube, the channel is Engelion. ENGELLION. YouTube.com/Engelion. I should write that down, but it's back to front. You wouldn't be able to see it anyway. Okay, so that's it. Thanks for watching. Take care. I trust you'll gain a blessing in the Sabbath school lessons this morning. Now, why am I up broadcasting here this morning at this time? You wonder? It's because I was asked to share a sermon in Italy on Zoom, and I was doing that. I think it's Friday night over there in Europe. I think some of you guys from Europe. Hello on Instagram there. Brother Stephen, Brother Chongi, and I'm not sure who else is there, but hi guys. And I was just sharing there on Zoom for the Italian field conference, a message there tonight. So that's why it was at 3 o'clock in the morning my time. So that's why I'm up now. Haven't gone to bed yet. So I'm about to go to bed because I've got to go and preach 11 o'clock. Anyway, hope you've enjoyed this. So wherever you are, remember, take the Lord with you, be prayerful, be careful, and have a wonderful Sabbath day. And I look forward to you joining me next Friday for a Sabbath Bible lesson Teachers Helps. Until then, take care and God bless.